Recording.
It's in the
I think it's really.
Just that's
I think Jeff said that he was gonna be a few minutes
He
late,
did.
because I think he had PT until 3.
That's just us.
Chris, how are you? Seems like you've been busy for the last few days.
Indeed.
Click that little arrow, click that.
Oh, here we go.
Oh.
Okay. There you go.
Sorry, green light over here.
And Jeff is not joining, is that correct?
No, I believe he is, he just will be remote and he'll be a couple minutes off the back, so we should probably start with that.
I want to make sure we're good.
But I did catch up with him substantively yesterday.
We're good. Okay, all right, IT, we're all set, everything recording, we're good to go. Folks are here. Well, welcome to the Town of Alta Planning Commission, Wednesday, November 19th, 2025. We call the meeting to order. Got a nice agenda ahead of us, and thanks again to Chris and staff for getting us all squared away and teed up for the meeting today. The editorial here, has anybody been watching the Revolution, the Ken Burns documentary?
I haven't, but I've been thinking that I should.
It's quite good. The reason I bring it up, the nexus to this meeting, is we were talking about conferences before we started it. The League of Cities and Towns keynote speaker was an historian who is interviewed quite a bit on that show. As I'm talking head, so to speak, as far as the Ken Burns documentary. So what we heard at the conference was right in line with a lot of what the documentary is about. So hurry home at 7 o'clock if you're interested, but it's quite good. It's relevant to our times as well. So and that was a great conference, by the way, colleague, and hopefully I know we'll continue as a town to be represented there. Any public comment before we dive into the formal agenda today? No, seeing none, cool. Why don't we talk about approval of our minutes of October 22nd meeting? Again, appreciate the minutes and the breadth and depth. Anybody have any thoughts, comments at? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion to approve the minutes of October 22nd. All those in favor, thumbs up on the right.
Aye.
Opposed, thank you. Next agenda item 4, moving right along. Agenda item 4 and 5 obviously related. No, I'm sorry. Agenda item 4. Shallow Shop zoning text amendment. And we've heard some discussions on this in the past, and we're back today to some additional thoughts. Chris, is there anything you want or call to introduce this agenda item?
We can see just a few things, I'll keep it really brief. So thank you guys for being here today. This is it's a similar topic to what these folks have been here a couple of times over the last year and a half to discuss with us. The key differences are that they have submitted a formal application at this point. We received that Monday of last week. So we're gonna run them through a process, run them through the same process that anybody proposing an amendment to Town of Alta code who complies with the process that we provide is entitled to. So I think I described some of the peculiarities of this particular the process that we've set up for this one in the staff report. We don't really need to get into that, but I do appreciate you guys kind of working with me to find something that worked for us to have our bases covered. Another key difference is the actual text amendment itself They've got a similar but different approach to the minimum lot area and width challenge that a few of the lots in the base facility zone face. And they also have a kind of a new approach to the use they're seeking in their redevelopment concept, which is to essentially introduce new allowed use only be allowed in base facility zone C. So I guess with that, all I want to say before turning it over to these guys is that I know we've had a fair amount of discussion back and forth in the previous meetings about the various nonconformities that exist on the property today and some apparent nonconformities that may exist if they pursue the development concept they've presented. And I would like to see if we can avoid getting bogged down in those for starters. I think the most efficient thing for us to do and the most fair thing for the applicant is for us to focus on the actual ordinance changes they're proposing. And if, depending on how that goes, we can move on to some of those other topics. But I'd really like to try to focus the discussion today on their proposed text amendments and all of the interesting topics that those raise for us. So
Fair enough.
it's something you guys. Okay.
And no action.
Yes, this is so, yes, no action was noticed today. We need to do a public hearing 10 days in advance in order for the committee adopt a recommendation, make a recommendation to the council. The pathway on this is for the commission to eventually vote on a recommendation to the council, positive, neutral, or negative. It can have conditions of approval, not. And then the council has final authority to approve a land use regulation amendment.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Chris and others. With that,
Okay,
you're over
right,
to Representative Michelle Schaff.
do some intros, but for some, which will show.
Hello.
Jeff.
Hey, Jeff.
Hi, Jeff. Hope you're feeling better.
Well, never good after PT, but it supposedly makes me better.
Vitamin I comes in handy.
Okay, well, thank you for getting us back on the agenda today, despite way of introductions. Again, I'm Edwina Hoffman, representing the Shallow Shaft. Walter couldn't be here, he's suffering from a little bit of an upper respiratory infection, so he's hanging tight at home. Got Jay Springer here from is our legal counsel and Hans Hospital as an architect. The proposal, so I wanted to keep them involved, but we're not gonna be getting into some of the detailed design. She's just want to make sure that they're here listening to all of the discussions. And so what I thought I'd do from a starting standpoint, having worked in business for quite a long time and having review bodies that see things periodically, sometimes it's good to just give a review. And we haven't had Paul on the commission before, and so I want to make sure that kind of bring him up to speed. So we'll just do kind of a high level overview of how we got to being here today. So the meeting purpose is, I'm going to provide a little bit of this overview. I want to present our proposal for a rezone and or text amendment and the conditions associated with zone C for the base facility zone. And these are really being in response to the March 2025 Planning Commission feedback and subsequent discussions that we've had from individuals, both in the council and staff members. So just, you guys have all seen this slide before, but Paul and I don't know each other, so it's primarily for him. So the shallow shaft's been part of Alta since 1956. We have owned it, as a family for 39 years, and so have been here for quite some time. It was purchased by Walter in 1986. And through that process, we've provided ongoing support to, all of the support people from the overall, Alta, so the Alta Art Council, Friends of Alta, etc. And we brought our kids here on a number of ski vacations and spent a lot of time here in the various lodges. Plus, we strongly encouraged all of our children to come here and work as ski moms after they graduated from college, and all of them did. Our girls spent a few seasons here, and the boys just came for a couple. And most recently last year, our oldest daughter was buried at the Snow Pine Lodge. So it's really to say that we have a long history here. We feel really integrated, in Alta. It's close to our hearts as it is to all of you, so just wanted to share that with you. So from a planning commission meeting standpoint, this was the first one we had in April of 2024. We've had the restaurant closed since COVID in 2020. We didn't open in 2021, the pandemic was still ongoing, there was social distancing involved, and it would have been very difficult for us to run a small restaurant with social distancing. We had planned to come in 2023 to present some proposals here, but we learned at the very end of 2022 that Walter may have to have open heart surgery. Then it didn't look like he had open heart surgery, and that was confirmed in February, and he has surgery in April. So pretty extensive surgery there and 6 months recovery, and then we after that met with Chris and asked to be put on the planning commission council, and got on in April. So we shared at that time, so this is a picture of how the building would have looked like that we proposed. We wanted to write an overview. We wanted to demolish the current shallow shaft building and rebuild the building in a new orientation. We wanted to ensure full code compliance. It's an old building, 1956. The codes have changed quite a bit from them. We wanted to make sure we were in full compliance there. We wanted to focus on health, safety, and sustainability. You'll see the front of the building design has solar panels on it. We really focused on energy consumption and making it very energy efficient. We wanted to repurpose the restaurant and the apartment into the permitted use of a hotel. We shared some site maps, display of exterior views and the designs. And roughly the 3-level structure, first level was the covered parking. That's where you see the parking spaces in front of the entrance to the garage was off of the Forest Road. And then there were 2nd and 3rd levels, 4 units in total, and 8 hotel rooms. Got a lot of great feedback from the planning commission at that time. And so we incorporated that feedback into our next presentation, which was in March of this year. And so that was in response to the 2024 feedback. There was a meeting held with our attorneys and Chris and Polly in November. And we wanted that feedback to apply to this. So based on the feedback, we were hitting the items that we thought we heard. We wanted to make sure we were listening to all of you and hitting those feedback. So we heard that, employee housing was important, even though we were going to at the time and still will probably outsource the management to an outside group. Strong feeling of employee housing. We added employee housing to one of the second floor of the building. We heard that, there was sort of the loss of the freestanding restaurant. So we heard that and said, okay, let's add a retail space. This can be a coffee shop, it can be a cafe, it can be, kind of what's needed by the town of Alta. We reduced the room count from 8 to 5. We wanted to have a more compact design. Actually, Hans, when he was designing, this for us, he really used the shallow shaft for inspiration. So some of the frontage looks similar to the current restaurant. The parking was adjusted to meet UDOT feedback, so we went and met with UDOT. And basically their main feedback, or there were a couple of points of feedback. One, the Forest Road isn't plowed, so that was a challenge for us. So we said we have to move it to the front. Then we talked to UDOT, they basically said, you cannot back out onto the highway. You gotta go in, turn around, back out. And even though all up and down the canyon, everybody backs out onto the highway, they said, we can control you. So you have to rearrange your garage. So we did that. And that, you know, obviously the more compact design and with that reduce the parking spaces from 8 to 5. The back of the previous design, we had some windows concerns about, you know, avalanche, concerning about it being used for an interlodge, so we modified that. The back is concrete. Again, we said last time, we are well aware that we have to do a 100-year avalanche study. That will be done when we have the final design, because we actually did a grammar request on the avalanche studies that have been done in this area, just to understand what was involved, and it's pretty clear from those that those studies are moot if you change your design, so we have to give them a design and stick with it, so no, we need to do that. We had some proposal for snow melt and water management around the culvert to ensure environmental sustainability. We presented some designs to you. We haven't done much since then because we've had some other discussions that have caused us to be here today. We know that that is a requirement for us, and nothing that we're submitting with this text amendment changes anything of that in the code. You know, so it's not changed. We know we have to work through the issues there. When we were talking, the main points of discussion from that meeting was the culvert management. Jeff, who's, you know, on the phone, helped, you know, get, I think, the planning commission and all of us to a point that we determined that that is a solvable issue. That's something that we can solve. There are ways that it can be managed. But really the sticking point for the planning commission was hotel rooms with adjacent kitchens. That was a point of disagreement between the Shallow Shaft owners and the town of Alta. That we felt like the hotel definition that was in the code placed no restrictions on having kitchens and hotel rooms. I think we got some positive feedback on the design and the overall building, incorporating all of the feedback. And so that was just kind of a sticking point. We didn't get to agreement at the last meeting. So good summary of those 2 points moving forward. So what have we done since then? So actually the next day of that meeting, Walter and I had a meeting with Mike Long from the Alta Lifts company and, you know, the general manager, and shared with him a presentation that we had shared with all of you. He was very positive about what we were doing, suggested that we continue to move forward, work with the town, talk with more people, get more feedback. Additionally, we did place a grammar request for the plans and building permits for the Snow Pine Rustler and Gold Miner's Daughters lodges to understand the approval process, because each of those lodges have rooms with full kitchens that they rent. So the Snow Pine Lodge rents their owner suite, their penthouse suite. The Western Lodge rents out the owner's suite, and the Gold Miner's Daughter has 3 junior suites with kitchens in them. So we wanted to understand that overall process. We also asked for building plans and permits associated with the town office so that we can understand how that was done. There's a culvert just below the town office that's not 50 feet away, and we wanted to understand kind of all of those processes there. I met with town council members. I actually have been out in here. I've been out in Utah almost every single month over the summer. I came out in July. Prior to that meeting, I sent emails to the town council members, not to the mayor. He was in all of these meetings, at least the first time. I wanted to talk with the council members before talking with the mayor. Subsequently, I got feedback from Dan and John right away. I met with Dan in July. John couldn't meet with me until August because he was out of town. So then in August, came back in August, sent out emails again to the 2 other members that I hadn't heard from. This time heard from Lisa. She would be out of town and was able to be with John. And when I was back in September and October, still was not able to meet with the 2 other members of the council. Actually didn't get feedback at all from one of them. So so we'll still see what we continue to work there. Met with the mayor at that meeting, and at the end of September and early October, and Chris joined at that meeting. And so during that discussion, you know, with the mayor, Chris said that he goes, "Hey, Andrew, and I have some ideas for you that might be helpful for you to consider as you're moving forward. There seems like maybe there may have been some background discussions," and he said perhaps you should consider maybe doing a rezone on Zone C that would allow you to do what you want or an overlay zone. And Chris was not able to be for the full meeting. I wasn't sure I fully understood what he was suggesting might be an opportunity to move forward, so we corresponded by email on that, at least initially. I had looked at the code. There wasn't a rezone process in the base facility zone. There was not a definition of the code of an overlay zone, so it wasn't really clear to me what I should be doing or considering there. So Chris and I were able to meet later in the week, and he presented me with the rezone process for the forestry zone and also the amendment process, and said, hey, these are the processes that you could follow. And in that discussion said, okay, put down, you know, kind of a use that you would like to say that you are doing. Or promote or gonna present to the town, that clarification that he wanted me to consider, the entire zone C. And, you know, I kind of took away from that as a message that maybe we should consider looking at residential units in zone C. So I talked with Chris about wanting to submit something to him for review, because I didn't really want to get into groups with the planning commission. Would like to get some advice from him before we move forward. So we put together an actual proposal with all of the text in it and provided it to Chris for review. And he came back and said, hey, you know, we don't want to do residential units in zone C. Would like you to sit down and figure out a new definition or use that would allow you to do what you would like to do, allow you to have rooms that you rent on a nightly basis, that have kitchens in them so people can prepare their food. Could be a new definition of a hotel, obviously not getting, you know, the direction you should write it exactly this way. And so we sat down and thought through this and talked about having a new hotel, you know, boutique hotel definition that would only be for zone C. So got, I think, pretty clear feedback. Let's try to confine your definition to zone C, so that other people can't, you know, do this in other zones with actually having to go through a process to do so. So that was our kind of approach moving forward. So we had some iterations and some discussions, and really the outcome was the final submission that we made to the town. So I wanna walk through, you know, those with you. So I know this is stating the obvious, but I think it's always good to know what's in each zone. So according to the code, in zone A, this is Snow Pine to the west of the Alta Lodge. Zone B is Snow Pine or Starter, and the Alta Pavilion Lodge, and zone C is the Shallow Tap. So that's what's in the code. That's what we talking about when we go back through here. So our proposed rezone and conditions are covering the lot area. So the lot width and lot area. We had the new permitted use in a boutique hotel, and then a definition of what that boutique hotel is. So this is the current awarding of the code for the base facility zone. It essentially says you can't make any changes to any building or structure unless any of the following conditions exist. So the lot size is less than 1 net developed acre if the slope exceeds 30%, and the width is not less than 1 feet. So that's the current code. And this is what the red line of what we're suggesting that we change to. So there's a and a B, you know, here. So construction of any building structure or improvements in zone A or zone B shall not be permitted where any of the following conditions exist. So same 3 conditions as on the previous page. And then we added a new section in zone B, that any lot or parcel in zone C that existed as a separate legal lot or parcel prior to January 1, 2025 and has not been subdivided or otherwise modified since that date shall be deemed to meet the minimum lot area with requirement of this code. Despite the net developable acre area being less than 1 acre for the purposes of any development application. So such lot shall be developed in accordance with all other applicable zoning requirements, including lot coverage and height, regardless of whether the lot area meets the current dimensional standards for lot width frontage. So that would be change, the text amendment that would allow us to tear down the current shallow shaft, reposition and follow all of the requirements of the code. In doing that kind of a modification. So then we go to the permitted use, and so here's the red line to the permitted use section of the base facility zone. So you can see the current permitted uses there, a lot of detail there, but this is verbatim from the code. And then we changed the following are additional permitted uses only in the base facilities zone C and not in zone A and zone B. And we put, and then living quarters associated with persons employed on the premises for any main use, which is a hotel. And so all other uses not identified in subsection A above are permitted in zone A and prohibited in zones A and B, and all uses not identified in subsection A or B are prohibited in the base facility zone, including zone C. So it just modifies adding the boutique hotel to zone C. So here's the proposed new definition. And so in the definition, just wanted to remind folks that we were trying to write a definition that identified it with zone C. The verbiage may not be perfect. I think Chris called out maybe in the bottom of the lower section of this that it might not be legal to do this, but the intention that we were doing here was to define something to confine it to zone C so that a lot in zone B decided to tear down and rebuild, they couldn't develop a bunch of boutique hotels. Well, that was kind of what we were trying to get at here. So anyway, so boutique hotel, a small independently operated lodge facility located within zone C of the base facility zone containing no more than 8 guest rooms, including any on-site worker housing units as may be required by Alta code. The boutique hotel shall be separately owned and independent from any larger resort, hotel, or lodging facility, notwithstanding anything to the contrary in the Alta code. Guest rooms and a boutique hotel may include in-room or shared kitchens and kitchenette for guest use. So that's what we had. So pause it for discussion.
I make
Please.
1 or 2 comments. So I just want to clarify that I think the way Andrina describes our interaction over the last few months sounds like how I recall it. I just want to make it clear that, and I'm sure these guys understand that I was not telling them what to do or, you know, offering a this for that sort of pathway. My intent in proposing to them or suggesting they consider proposing to you a use that would be limited in area to zone C was that proposing it to be allowed throughout the base facility zone would be a very significant change, right? We've not permitted kitchens and hotel rooms before. We don't allow residential units in the base facility zone other than employee accommodations. And so I didn't think we wanted to go down that road at this time. So the commission and ultimately the council can recommend or decide to allow this in zone C. We can decide to allow it everywhere or nowhere. So, you know, whichever direction the commission and the council want to take is fine. That's just how we came to this particular concept. I do appreciate your acknowledgement of that boutique hotel, that equivalent boutique hotel that was actually from Polly. And I would also offer, I appreciate your intent there, and I think it's a good step. When you Google boutique hotel, the definitions that you find would describe all the hotels in Alta basically. So it's not necessarily relevant what Google says, so long as we have a definition that we can work with, but they're all independent already. They're not large hotels.
What does AI say?
Yeah, Google Gemini says, you know, not part of a larger resort, independently operated, so not a Holiday Inn, but we don't think there's a way we can prohibit the Holiday Inn from, you know.
I'm a little confused, and
kitchen, you're just talking about a refrigerator and a stove, is that right? What are you talking about?
Well, I mean, kitchen, so the full kitchen would have a refrigerator, you know, a stove. Dishwasher, things like that, so they're like a kitchenette is a microwave. You know, and maybe a mini fridge or something like that, that typically is in probably most hotel rooms. Here, I don't know about the microwaves, so they're certainly.
If I can add,
Please.
so one of the reasons you'll notice, both the use and the definition are limited to zoning belt and suspenders, so that when somebody looks at the definition section alone, they don't think, oh, that's something that's open. I mean, you could say it in either, you could just say it in the use section, and that would have the same legal effect, but if the impression, we're trying to accommodate and account for, how it might present itself, to somebody that isn't here today, but is reading a code that could be adopted 5 years from now. Oh, they have that definition of boutique hotel, surely we can use that in zones A and B. So that's why it's duplicated, not for any effect on our application, it's really just to clarify the intent and the scope.
Yeah, I guess that was my question, maybe for Polly too, do we even need a definition of a boutique hotel anywhere? It says that hotels are permitted use.
Well, the problem is-
Why do we dive deeper?
Is because under the building code and under our definition of hotel, kitchens are not allowed in hotels.
Right.
And I think that that's what's such a seismic difference, right? Because if you allow any, your purpose statement, generally a kitchen converts something into a dwelling.
Right.
And so and you have in your purpose statement in the base facility zone that that residences, dwellings are not allowed.
Right.
So you need to have some kind of definition to allow for hotels to have kitchens. If that's something that you want, and while it's true that how they've framed it is trying to really box it to just
Okay.
zone C. One of the things you need to discuss is, does that open the door to other locations within the base facility zone from a fairness standpoint to say, you let them do it and we can make a lot more money if we have kitchens in our lodges. And that's what we wanna do, so that's that's a legislative decision that
Yes,
ultimately the
okay.
council would decide, but. They would want your input. And one other thing that kind of came up in preparing for today's meeting that wasn't really addressed because this was just a work session. And maybe would be discussed further down the line, is just a real history of that base facility zone. Forest, there's a long complicated history because the Forest Service owned a lot of the land I didn't realize, I have always knew it applied to these two in zone C. But it also applies to many of the other lodges, and so kind of understanding that timeline might be something else to be thinking about as this progresses, if that's something that you're interested in, because knowing what was kind of grandfathered in, non-conforming when the land was transferred, as well as when this new zone was created, that zone did create some non-conformities.
For sure. Sorry, just one minute, so the word boutique is really kind of just it's almost like any word, and arbitrary and attach it to a hotel. It just means,
Well-
euphemism for adding on the kitchen.
Doesn't necessarily have to be, doesn't have to say hotel, I don't think, I mean,
Okay,
we can find a definition that
Okay.
works if this is a good outcome.
okay, I was curious, as far as the difference.
And we probably also, for what it's worth, we wanna consider. I mean, the prohibition of residential uses in the general plan.
Right.
And, you know, the definition of a dwelling unit is that a building or portion thereof which contains living facilities, including provisions for eating, sleeping, cooking, and sanitation. So it is pretty, it's been a fundamental principle of our
Sure.
land use planning and regulation. So we may want to consider other changes, or a few other changes if we're gonna go in this direction, which is not to say we shouldn't.
Sure.
Had another point, but I lost my train of thought.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, my question is that I think I heard that the definition of hotel is in the building code as well, doesn't allow kitchens, which is not the case. The building code allows kitchens in hotels and stuff.
Residential, did you mean residential uses?
Residential uses. And I thought we had talked about none of we view hotels as not being
Yeah.
dwellings.
Understood in Alta language, but in the building code, kitchens are allowed in hotels.
Yeah, most hotels have them now.
It's not that they're not allowed in a hotel but the building code defines a dwelling. That's usually how you define what a dwelling is that it has a kitchen.
Yeah, we just have.
I mean, that's really getting in the weeds. I think you need to look more broad stroke of what do you want to allow in the zone.
Yeah, I don't know, Mary or Dave too, or.
You know, well, just taking notes, looking at the packet, and then being refreshed with the, you know, the project and, I think the text amendment is a definite path, you know, that is gonna help us get through a resolution if we end up here in the, allowing something like this or recommending to allow something of this vein. The ideas that aren't really talked about or just mentioned is that it's a mixed use project, and, you know, this is the spot that we do it, it's in town here, the parking is structured and it's on site. Workforce housing is included in some fashion, whether that is specifically working for the entity that's the hotel or whatever we're gonna call it. So maybe not clear right now, but and then there's also a commercial use, it's a limited size, so that would be something that I'm like, is that viable or reasonable? But I appreciate the, you know, nature of it, you know, it sort of fits with, you know, as far as downtown goes, you're looking at it right here. And, you know, there's not much opportunity of that, and so I appreciate the idea there. What I'm trying to get to is that, maybe there's some. I don't wanna overcomplicate it, but, there is some benefit to the community by the way it's not just a single family McMansion placed there, it's a different kind of, you know, structure with a different kind of use than a single family home. So I do appreciate that effort and the idea of sort of leaning into where it is in town. And then appreciating, you know, that this, as Polly was talking about, there's been some zoning history that has occurred throughout the ownership of both parcels that we're calling as Zone C, so I did recognize that and didn't know if that was some sort of measuring stick. Often we have in other cities and municipalities, it's not really a bonus program, but if you provide certain types of uses or you provide screened parking or structured parking, it's a mechanism to have some flexibility with uses, and so I don't know if we need to get that deep into the weeds. I often don't want to change a lot about an ordinance, you know, but there is some benefit that the project is bringing, so I don't know if there's something that we would recommend that says, you know, if you're providing a mix of uses, you know, or, you know, that kind of thing, then a project like this is allowed, or if there's structured parking on site and a commercial use, you can have kitchens in your hotel rooms. So, you know what I mean? That's the sort of a thought process I was kind of going through and trying to, you know, see where the team is at, you know, and then maybe try to help advance the topic.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah.
Meredith?
Yeah, and that's an interesting thought to kind of have that trade-off. I hadn't really thought of that, because, yeah, I think the coffee shop's a great addition, just finding something for the community, because the initial proposal didn't really do anything for the community. There wasn't any employee housing or commercial use. I am struggling a little bit with the, allowing one business to have this major change that probably all the other lodges would also want to do, but they can't because they're well-established businesses and, they don't want to change it for the group as a whole, but we will for this. Haven't quite made my mind up on that, but I'm struggling with it. The other thing I was curious about with the definition that we're writing, is it problematic, maybe this is for Polly, to have a definition like this that's so specific to this building that you're proposing to put in our code? Cause like the building isn't necessarily finalized either, and if things change, but we're limited to this definition, like what are the recourses from that? Or
Yeah, I mean, I think one could say that it's a little different than spot zoning because. Because, well, it's a little subzone that is to buildings. Whatever definition. If that's the way you go, needs to be very tailored to what you think is correct for that area. Because this is going to apply forever, and yes, they have this concept. But the photo house could say, oh, great, now we can tear down our building and do something similar. I mean, the photo house has its own history. But that doesn't, you wanna have something that, as you said, isn't just specific to exactly what they're doing. Which along those lines, I mean, here they're proposing 5 rooms. Which may be all that they can. Yeah, I don't know what the net developable area is for this location, and that's something else that's come up in regards to the culvert. Just net developable area, they're only allowed a number of guest rooms based on their net developable acreage. So they might not, let's say that they're entitled to 5, well, maybe you would want to limit it even smaller so that you're not opening the door to something else. I also just want to mention the employee housing is required under the current code. So that's not so much of a definition. I don't know quite, maybe they were just trying to be clear when they were.
Yeah, we're just trying to be clear, we
Yeah.
know it's
It's not
required,
biased
but
points, yeah.
you have to have 1 guest room for 5.
Right, you have to have
Everybody
one,
else for 5 guest rooms.
right, so anyway, I just wanted to point that out, that's not something that's really part of, it's not different from any definition in the base facility zone. And one other thing that helped me kind of think about this is what are they asking for? So to me, I think they have 2 big asks. One is to change the code related to the lot size and lot width, which is that text amendment, which then allows it to not be non-conforming. It allows them to expand the footprint, then they're not stuck in the same footprint. Under the current code, they could rebuild and be 250 square feet bigger. But what this would do would make them conforming so they could max out, or maybe not them, but the next owner could max it out to whatever the base facility zone is allowed. It would no longer be non-conforming. So that's kind of step 1. And then the second part that they're asking for is this use allowance. So I don't know, it took me a while, there are a lot of moving parts,
That's good.
Yeah, but
But,
like we had a little bit of this discussion last time where we shared that. Right now, zone C says you can do 65% of your gross area, just like it is everywhere else. So it's 65% of the lot we have, or 65% of the 4 acres that the Alta Lodge has, or anybody else has. And so we basically said, yes, it says that. That's kind of a moot point for us because we can't do that under the current code. And when the code was changed back in, 2015 or wherever it's changed to allow the zones to go from 25% to 65% coverage. In zone A and zone B, that was 160% increase in coverage for those lodges. So for zone C, while it says 65%, you can't do it because you're less than 1 acre. But you can add 250 square feet if you wanna tear down and rebuild. And that 250 square feet for the shallow shaft is a 6% increase.
6%,
6% compared to 160%.
that's gotta be more in your total floor area. On both floors.
No, because it says total, it's the indoor floor area, it's a
Yeah.
total increase, so you couldn't even if you had a layer where it was only 1 story for part of it, you couldn't then go. You couldn't make that 2 stories there because that would be increasing the square feet indoors.
Yes,
I'm gonna turn it over to Jeff, he's got his hand up nicely and also need to hear from you.
Yeah, great. So, I want to express my appreciation to the applicant, basically to, kind of really be thinking through this and kind of creating a solution that really works for them. And I think to some degree, for the town. But my concern is the precedent that it sets, maybe not under the legal definition, but in terms of fairness and equity to the other lodges that may want to do a similar thing. And I took the opportunity to listen to the town council when they were reviewing the request by the Schranz estate, and that got a sense from the discussion there that the council was really potentially looking at this upgrade or revision to the general plan of maybe, looking at, condos or other uses within the base facility zone. And so I guess my question is it, more appropriate to wait on this discussion until we can fold it into the broader discussion of a general plan update?
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Oh, do you want to add anything else?
Yeah, I heard a unvarnished view from not having sat through the prior discussions about this. And also tend to be more of a big picture person than a detailed person about how these things fit, but I'm quite impressed by the proposal. One thing the ski resort needs is more hotbeds. And it'd be great to have a coffee shop, and we are talking to people who've been here a long time. I enjoyed eating in the Shallow Shack for 50 years. So I kind of like it myself, and it wouldn't bother me either if the other lodges wanted to add a sink and a microwave, whatever else. Any places you go now, in hotels, they all have that.
my little vendor's daughter, that's 3 units, kitchen.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and.
But for example, I've always enjoyed Moab, and I considered buying a unit in the Gonzo Inn. All they have is a sink and a coffee pot. And I didn't think that would work for me, even though it would cash flow on the rents because you just put it in the hotel, so. Anyway,
Place got flooded, I think, a few years ago. That's a little spot.
that happened,
Big storm.
that happened at Blackjack too.
Right.
Somebody didn't turn the water off the sink. Anyway, I kind of like it,
So,
so.
thanks. Do you mind going to the slide that talks about the other lodges with, maybe go to what you've discovered in terms of kitchens and you had a slide earlier?
Yeah, I don't think I don't have the side that we used in the presentation.
Yeah, I thought you had a slide that talked about who else has.
Well, so basically, that was part of my historical overview, let's see here. Oh,
But they're not supposed to be doing that.
Here,
Right.
yeah, so.
Some of them may have been permitted as, some of them may have been permitted as employee dwellings. Some of them some of them may have been permitted employee dwellings, some of them may have been altered without a building permit, but we don't issue permits for we don't issue permits for hotel rooms and kitchens. It's not something we've done. They count towards your hotel room density. And a few of the hotel rooms are maxed out in their hotel room density, even under the changes from 2016. So we are aware of that.
So
Okay,
Chris,
so,
just in terms of, Snow Pine Lodge, because we did do the gravel request, because at the meeting, well, 2 years ago, pointing out the Snow Pine Lodge and the Russell Lodge we had some they rented a full kitchen. For that April and March, and the gold miner's daughter. At that time, we were told by the town, we were not aware of this, thank you for telling us. We did then request the building permits, the Snow Pine Lodge, and the building permit for the Snow Pine, or the plans for the Snow Pine Lodge, it labels the penthouse suite as employee housing. So it's labeled as employee housing. We were not able to obtain building permits for the Rustler Gold Miner's Daughter. The code, at least as I read it, does require, if you're making changes, that you have to get a building permit to do that. So we are not able to find the building permit for the Rustler change or for the Gold Miner's Daughter changes.
okay. We'll just weigh in on it too, then, thanks for everybody's thoughts and input.
Can I add something?
Oh, yeah, please.
I look at this a little differently. Traditionally, Alta has had, the option for visitors has basically been the lodges in their traditional fashion. But what this does is add another option for visitors, one that doesn't really exist now in the central area of the lodge, of the town. I mean, you can rent a house or something in West Alta, but it's not like living in the middle. And this is a little different. It's something that the town has not had before and may be attractive to some visitors.
Yep. Okay, thanks. I have maybe more of a micro scale thought, comment from meso scale or macro. One is, I think I brought this up last time we met, is the definition of a kitchen seems to be very much a gray area. So obviously, I mean, I travel a lot, and so there's a coffee pot, microwave, and a mini fridge. We're getting, like, okay, you smell, you go out in the hallway, there's, microwave popcorn smell, all that stuff. And I don't consider that a kitchen. It's just more traditional amenities in the year 2025 in a hotel room seem to be. So going beyond that, though, it does start to look and more to talk like a kitchen if there's a range top or something like that. That's, to me, is maybe crossing the line, but maybe there's some clear definitions out there. Then that's my micro comment. My macro comment is, again, thanks for the staff report, Chris. I keep going back to what you've encapsulated on page 13 of 37 in the middle, when we talk about the town center commercial. And this is what I've always been passionate about as on the planning commission is, and I've highlighted here in the middle, it says section 4.3. Plan is generally construed to support activating the center of Alta by encouraging commercial activity that is accessible to the community. It appears to be socially active. I think that's a really good sentence and a good summary. And that's kind of my bellwether. Does this project do some, a lot, none of that metric? And I'm just throwing it, I don't have an answer, but I'm just throwing it out there what's important to me as far as a project in that criteria.
Well, compared to the current status, it certainly does.
Absolutely, yeah, we've got cobweb and tumbleweed, so.
Compared to when it was a restaurant though. maybe
I know.
And John, I think you're like the forebearer of, if that's the right word, you're a proponent of this provision in the general plan. It's like the most significant, somewhat recent general planning exercise and policy the town has made. And there have been a couple of other major land use policy
Sure.
updates. But the commercial elements process, I mean, mostly took place before I got here. And I know you often ask aloud, you point out that, we made that amendment to the general plan 12 years ago. We made the change to the base facilities zone subsequent to that. I think it was 9 years ago by the time it got adopted. And is it still relevant? A lot, there's been a lot of water under the bridge,
Yes.
a lot of change in Utah and the ski industry and Little Cotton Canyon.
Right.
A lot, there's a lot that's different in Little Cottonwood and a lot that's not, but, so right, how much faith do we have in the commercial form is a fair question.
I think that's, and good to bring that up. I guess I'm still out there hoping that this is still relevant and valid and not just for the present, but for the future. And that's on our next agenda item possibly, but this is just me. I think there hasn't been much in the way of making, this being a metric very often. But I just think I think Dave also kind of touched on this in his comments too, is that activation and just activity, having a place there, helping to have a here is to me a good thing, but again, that's how I interpret some of these things, but 100 points or whatever, are more than welcome. So, excuse me, where do we go next with this is, maybe ask the staff and also colleagues here.
I also asked one
Yeah,
clarifying
yeah,
question
yeah,
on
absolutely.
more on the lot area width section. Should that section A actually say construction of any building, structure and improvements in zones A, B, and C? So that the exception is really only applying to the lots that it's talking about with the January 1 date, or because otherwise then zone C doesn't really have to adhere to any of those requirements. Am I reading that?
That should have the point of writing it that way. But zone C can't, so for us to. It's essentially saying because we have less than 1 maximum 1 acre, we can't do anything but build in the footprint that we're in plus 250 square feet.
Right, but that's what the exception is saying.
Are you asking about the paragraph that begins any lot or parcel in zone C that?
Yeah.
We
'Cause
discussed
that's
this yesterday, didn't we?
right, because that's kind of, you're specifying it to any lots that existed before January 1, 2025, and that has not been subdivided or otherwise modified, because the photo house has been modified.
Well, it's,
The lot
has.
Oh, the lots, just, but the building has,
Yes.
okay,
So.
gotcha.
But it's true, it's a good point, because it doesn't address the slope exceeding 30%. And I don't know
Right.
that you wanna waive that requirement.
Yeah, it just seems like you can have the exception to get what you're looking for, but still have the restriction otherwise.
If I can offer,
Please.
it would be very easy to bring for the public hearing a version of this that has. That, a notwithstanding version, that kind of says notwithstanding these requirements. And then the carve out, but this was just saying, because we know what we're faced with here. The only 2 parcels in lot zone C do not meet subsection now A1 above, they can't do it. That's what we drafted for, but if you wanted to remove that, and just have it say. These apply generally, and here's an exception, as opposed to these apply to A and B, and here's what we do for zone C. We could present another option, the planning. Which version we felt more comfortable with to the council, that could be part of the recommendation, we'd be happy to do that.
That would make more sense.
And also, I have to admit, I had some issues with some of the language, but I didn't wanna get in the weeds, not knowing. For example, it sounds like just hearing, would you require a retail component to, to this type of concept that David mentioned. I don't know if you want me to just kind of talk about next steps. I think part of it is, you know, I think that the intent today was just to kind of get the temperature. And I've heard different things and, you know, so up the applicant, they have a accepted application, so they do have a right to come back, have a public hearing. And then it would go, you would have 10-day notice, or it would be a public hearing. You would make recommendations, you can either recommend negative, positive with conditions, or neutral with conditions. And then it goes to the town council, they're the ones that ultimately have to decide. You know, based on, I think, where we think it's going, we can try to refine language or not. I don't, you know, I also heard input that, hey, maybe this should wait till you have general plan input with just based on other things going on. Chris, is there anything you wanna add?
Yeah, well. I've heard a couple things, we've all heard a couple things, but there's the question of requiring commercial use. There is again, I appreciate the attempt with the boutique hotel. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not like super comfortable with that. If this is in the public interest and we're going to adopt a new allowed use, I would definitely want to think more about whether that's the right one. Because again, I think these are all boutique hotels compared to most hotels. So that's one thing. I mean, I think we need to consider. I think we need to carefully consider the. We need to carefully consider the prohibition of residential uses as it appears elsewhere in our, especially in the code, particularly the purpose section. We may want to adopt an amendment to the purpose section of base facility zone if this is something the planning commission and the council want to allow. I mean, I think I think Polly's right. I think a history of how these lots, 7 of the 8 private parcels that are zone-based facilities were forest property until about 1985. And I think Polly's right that history is rarely addressed and would be worth discussing with the commission and the council. I've always wanted to see a massing rendering of how much mass could fit on these lots if the minimum lot area and width. If they're non-conforming with respect to minimum lot area and with setbacks and height are individually determined by the planning commission in the zone, which is not my favorite provision in our land use regulations, but but we don't know. We don't know what it would look like. I mean, this is the building they're proposing. But you know, we don't know what happens a generation down the line when that's torn down and someone wants to build something else, the shallow shaft 3.0. What happens when the photo house wants to tear down and rebuild a new building? We don't know. We don't know what it's going to look like. And that is really basic stuff that's really basic stuff in any municipal land use regulations. What is the look and feel? What's the social impact of having more density? So there are all sorts of analyses we could do to consider that. And yeah, so I would like to see massing renderings, an attempt at illustrating how much mass could be situated on those 2 lots if this is going to go forward.
And just to piggyback on that, I think it's a little cart and horse, but I don't know that staff has ever seen a clear site plan that shows where there's the culvert issue that's been discussed quite a bit, and we do have requirements related to the culvert that the plans that they're proposing don't seem to meet. Likewise, I don't know that there's been an analysis of how much net developable acreage there is. And I just say this up front because does the town wanna jump through all these changes and consideration if in the end the applicant either is gonna have to ask for more variances and or can't do what they wanna do under other sections of the code.
Right, so,
Understood.
yeah, so we can do the code changes, but to set ourselves up for future conflict or denial of permit applications, then, right. So I do think we've had a good discussion
Yeah,
about
no, I think it's
fundamentals.
I think it's understood, where we are. I'm hearing some things for the next meeting, to be honest, but I wanna go back to a little detail, just a question. And maybe anybody here, who do people rent out a room for the season at any of our current lodges? And it's like, I'm gonna book it for 4 months.
No, I mean, we have some guests that will try to book for like 30 days.
30, okay,
It's very difficult for them to do so.
Okay.
There's a Duke professor at the,
Long Myers.
Oh, Goldmine, or
Brilliant.
the P Dog, I
Yeah,
think.
Their
has-
characters,
that's the
Yeah,
guy,
yeah.
he's here the whole season, teaches at Duke.
Redmond.
Yeah.
Professor.
Redmond.
okay, just curious. Oh, and Chris, the points well taken, for sure. It sounds like we have a little more homework, for the applicant to bring to the table a little bit. And also maybe for staff, the history, the whole pre-1985 story, whatever that story is.
So can I get some clarification there? I'm just not understanding that.
Yeah, Oliver or Chris,
Well,
what that means.
How is that?
Yeah, what the
impact what we're
yeah, what are the
doing?
consequences or implications?
It's just a unique condition that, it's a circumstance that's relatively unique to Alta. It's even a circumstance that's unique in Alta. I mean, much of the private property in Alta. We don't have title reports for every private lot, but many of them have been private since mining, and these have not. So they were presumably private. Many of them were private and then donated to the Forest Service. And then the process of establishing the lot lines is just, it's an interesting point of history. And to Molly's point about, and I think to Meredith's point about fairness, it's just worth it for the town and the community to consider, how these lots came into private ownership.
But does that change the, so I understand, because it doesn't change the lot or the title that we have or the
I
lot
think,
map or I'm not.
Yeah, how is that relevant?
A little bit cryptic, yeah.
I guess what my thought process or where it was kind of interesting. I thought would be interesting to you as the decision maker. Is that when you're looking at this from an equity fairness standpoint. You wanna see what exists for the other properties that also
Okay.
are in the
Right.
same situation.
Right.
And not as, not realizing until,
Properties, base facility zone or?
yeah, base facilities.
Okay.
So just understanding, oh, well, what the timeline was, what the uses were. Just getting a clear understanding of that will help, I think, inform you in terms of equity, it's just one other, it's not. I don't think it decides it either way, I think it's just interesting if you're saying, well, this isn't fair because we're unique. We're the only one that's substandard, it's like, well, let's understand what happened when. When that whole area was created, and also what happened, the timeline of when the base facility zone was created. And those restrictions, because prior to the base facility zone, it was a different standard, right? The only reason that you have these substandard lots is because they were created back prior to 85 and the Forest Service decided to transfer them, so understanding it in the context of the bigger picture, I thought was interesting for you. But if you're not interested in that, then we don't have to go
And
into
that
that.
strikes me as, basically saying from a land use perspective that we've got a square peg. And you gotta fit in this square peg, whereas this, what John called, it seems more important to me to look at than our square peg. That's just how I think about it.
The,
Oh,
Active
yeah.
plan, yeah,
yeah, general plan.
Sure.
It's just how I think
yeah,
about it.
okay.
I guess in reaction to your statement, that zoning, it's, you gotta fit into a square peg hole, you know, that's zoning. So what I think. I agree with the general plan concept, I appreciate where we are and what we're talking about here in the base facility zone. And more specifically, it's honed in on base facility zone -C, which is even more honed in, so I guess. That's why I was trying to think of ways that we wanna have commercial and activation, so how could we. Right, for that pathway, that is the square peg, you're following along in the ordinance and you're meeting the conditions of the square peg.
Change the square peg.
Yeah, and so, you know, I'm not disagreeing with you, other than I live by the zoning every day of my life, so. It's sort of if someone blows that up, then what do I do,
Right.
but anyhow,
If we're gonna justify. If there are unique conditions. On these lots that justify. Changes to our zoning ordinance, which doesn't change very often. We should understand the history behind those unique conditions.
Sure, that's
Yeah.
fair.
And the fact that, yes,
There may
there's a
be-
square hole
Or maybe,
for peg, but there are lots of options for businesses that could run there. But you're just choosing to do one that maybe doesn't quite fit it at the moment. So I think that's a
Well, it's
perspective to have too.
so the hotel is permitted in the base facility zone, it is permitted in zone C. The definition of a hotel doesn't say you can't have kitchens, does not say that. Because in the building code allows it. So, and you know, so I'm just, you know, kind of sharing some thoughts here, you know, with
Yeah.
respect to. Being an owner of a business and being in the community for almost 40 years and working hard in this community. Albeit for the last 5 years, we've, you know, been challenged by the pandemic and challenged by family health issues. And, you know, we're back there trying to get it figured out. With respect to the whole overall plan, that I'll just remind you that that also was stated when we came in April. The next subsequent meetings looked at the general plan, so. You know, I thought that had been worked through, and so now we're saying, okay, we need to do it again before we consider this again. I'm just kind of reminding you that we did do it after the meeting last April.
I just wanna bring up another, look ahead again, think ahead to the next, potential meeting. The massing and plan view, well, what you mean, sorry, the massing, we don't have, at least I haven't seen a good rendering of what this looks like compared to some other things we've talked about recently. Do we have, can we get a massing plan and or, was there a plan view required as far as the submittal, the application? With slow, you know, contours and
well,
culvert and all that stuff.
they provided. They responded to the requirement for a statement of the plans they would
Okay.
pursue, but obviously. You know, those are subject to change, so what I'm talking about for massing rendering is not required.
Right, no, I know.
When
it's
we
not
consider,
required.
you know, you recall the base facilities on.
Sure.
Everybody has seen the Schron's Estates renderings of one large building versus
Yep, yep.
10 homes, I mean, it's just, you know, an everyday sort of product at the end.
Well, I think it's fair, if I may, I think it's, at least I would like to see, I'm very much a right brain person in terms of look and feel, it's, you know, obviously it's a very sensitive environment we're dealing with here, and any change is hard.
No.
And I think the more visuals you can help us with, I'll just leave it at that. Would be very much appreciated and
If we can do that,
we would like this, at least I think we would like to see
okay,
more
Right,
right stuff.
and I mean, from my perspective, there's just two lots.
Yeah,
So a massing that shows the photo house, let's say it's as tall as it is currently, the shallow shaft as tall as you're proposing, next to each other, so you can see how much closer the buildings get,
Sure.
how much closer they get to the road.
Right,
We can do that.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, that'd be helpful, at least to me and probably to others.
Mhm.
What do we wanna do as far as next steps in terms of the next meeting and where we stand on this? A little bit more information, a little bit, some of the.
Well, that's Jeff's timing issue, that is.
Pardon?
That Jeff's timing issue.
I mean, to go through, to wait for a general plan update, that's. could be-
Yeah, I mean,
Years.
let's segue, yeah, I mean, we won't have adopted a general plan update for some time, I mean.
Yeah, it'd be
We,
years.
we've got 15 minutes left in our regular meeting schedule, we are. Working toward applying for a grant to update the general plan, so we could begin a general plan update as soon as
April,
July.
okay.
But
That's just the beginning, that's not the end.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
boy, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears are gonna have to go into that one, I'm sure, so. Anyway, there's
Yeah,
never a good time to do that, there's never a best time, things happen when they
Yeah.
happen, so.
so maybe Jeff, we hear you, that, I think that schedule would be. Impractical, it sounds like, it looks like.
And
Yeah, I mean, putting their application in series with the completion of general plan is pretty burdensome.
yeah. And, yeah,
Well, would be too soon to suggest a public hearing with these new things that we're suggesting.
Well, so let me just speak to that. I
Yeah.
mean, you can kind of say what you would prefer. Ultimately, because they have an application in, they have a right to have a public hearing within 45 days or action. I mean, not quite 45 days. I mean, we have a right to take a little time to digest it and all, but they have a right to have their application heard in a timely manner.
Yes,
So, that being said, I think that if you don't think it's ripe yet, then you would probably be saying. Forwarding a negative recommendation until the general plan stuff is. Observed, or, that you talked about that in relation to the general plan.
or at least some of it, we've had a chance to discuss some of these other things, I mean, I think we're narrowing it down.
yes.
I know it sounds like maybe it's getting
No,
longer, but I think we're, pulling a limited number of threads out a little further for the time being, so. I mean, the way I picture a future meeting is more discussion on a couple topics, maybe some additional language. Or a different take on components of the text amendment, or, I don't know, Polly, does that sound
Yeah.
like what you're hearing?
Yeah, and the visuals we just talked about.
Yeah, I mean, we can do that and. First, we can. Continue this discussion to try to get at what.
Yeah.
Your thoughts were, and this is a first step of the language, and we can fine tune that language.
So are we meeting this, the time, the clock ticking in terms of, we're still gonna talk about it and things like that, we're not just ignoring them for
Right.
forever. We wanna have you back in December is what I'm hearing. With additional information and possibly by then, maybe the next meeting, there will be, we will decide, it doesn't, next meeting, that the following meeting we would have
Right, that makes
but
sense.
it's very, sound like we'd have a hearing, to be honest,
So are you suggesting that the hearing be in December or in January?
February.
Okay.
That's me, you guys need to weigh in on that too.
Yeah,
January seems reasonable.
yeah, December seems too soon.
I thought, it's hearing that way, yeah. So.
I mean, we'd be ready for a hearing in December.
I know, you would, but yeah, I think we,
There.
with things, we put things in the crock pot up here, that's okay. Does that sound like a reasonable schedule with everybody?
Well, maybe we could expedite it and do it earlier in January than normal too.
Yeah, depends on the snow, I mean. Yeah, is that? Like the staff.
I'd certainly rather keep the regular planning commission meeting schedule. One thing we have to do in December is adopt the schedule for next year. We've got some other sort of housekeeping and administrative stuff with the planning commission to take care of the next couple of months, so, you know. As we always do at the start of a year, I mean, yeah, but,
Okay.
I mean, we're prepared to facilitate the
Oh,
process.
sounds like we have a plan for this stuff. Okay,
Okay.
so thank you. Yeah, and we will see you next month. So I think that's good. Let's move on to agenda item 5, priorities, priorities for future town of Alta general plan update. And Chris has some slides.
I do, I guess I'll,
Thanks again.
Thank you.
thank you guys.
Rather than maybe
Thank
this
you.
weekend,
Yes,
touch base.
yeah, I'll be out next Wednesday, but I'm in until then, and I'll be back Monday fall, still, okay, so. Yeah, so, the general plan. A reason to try to have a discussion today, and I regret. That was a good discussion, I appreciate your focus on,
Thank you.
things in there. I did create some lines on it.
Don't let that guy in.
Hi, John.
Oh. I'm good at my screen is when I have my camera. Oh. Oh. One moment, please. How do I go full screen on this PDF here?
You guys.
Low right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Down at the bottom.
Wow, anyway. Okay, so we're looking at a general plan update. It's timely, we are. Wasatch Run Regional Council, the Metropolitan Planning Organization for Salt Lake County and several other urban counties. Offers a grant program called Transportation Land Use Connection. We've used 3 of these grants in the last 11 years. The grants fund general plan updates, code updates, small area plans. They fund planning, they don't exactly fund engineering, they don't fund capital. Anyway, the applications are due for the upcoming funding cycle. The applications are due December 11th, so this is our last chance to talk to the planning commission. I wish that we'd gotten about the process a little sooner, maybe been prepared to talk to you last month. Because if we do begin a general plan update, this is gonna be, it's gonna be a big deal for the planning commission, a big deal for the town council, it can be a big deal for staff, the community, all of our stakeholders. On down the line, so I think you'll understand what a general plan is. It's required under state law. For us to have a comprehensive long-range plan for the present and future needs of the municipality, growth and development of all or any part of the land within the municipality. So it's a land use plan, a guiding document for land use. And then there is a long list of things that a general plan may do. I won't enumerate those on our short timeline. At a minimum, general plans have to have a land use element, they have to have a transportation and traffic circulation element. It's a little tough to know what that would look like in the town of Alta general plan insofar as we don't own roads. So many cities are required to have a moderate income housing element. And the legislature recently adopted a requirement for most cities to have a water use and preservation element. We are exempt from those two requirements because we're a town. Fortunately. Or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it. Then there's in this other code section, there are a list of other things that a general plan may include. And it finishes with any other element the municipality desires, so we can really, we could really go down the rabbit hole, on the general plan update. I look forward to it. For the process, the planning commission shall provide notice when it initiates the process of preparing the planning commission's recommendation. So I think we would provide public notice as provided in state code. When we formally begin a general plan update. And then the commission runs the process to develop the general plan update, and then you recommend it to the council. It has final authority.
Whose cat is that?
Not least, that was my, sorry, sometimes when I
Oh, yeah, that's.
do things, it goes to my background.
So, that's interesting. So one thing that I was just gonna give you a PSA on, the legislature recodified the Land Use and Development Management Act, and, for any of us who might find yourself looking at the state land use code, while indisposed or, just on your free time at dinner with family, don't look under 10.9 anymore. I still have this reference from an old slide in here, but this is all under 10.20. So anyway, it's a land use guiding document first and foremost. So they're guiding for making or developing changes to our zoning. They can also guide decisions about where to invest in infrastructure and parks, so on and so forth. That's Robert Moses, the great city planner from New York City. Probably John is the only one at the table who's read the Power Broker, or who was supposed to read it in planning school.
Yeah, that's a long time ago.
This is example. I know we've talked about the town center commercial elements of the general plan. This is the last substantive, the last major update to the general plan yielded this kind of aspirational policy statement that we want to create an identifiable center of town. We want to connect the dots in terms of the seasonality of our local economy. And so that is the policy statement we made, and then a few years later, we made a major amendment to the base facility zone to increase coverage. Set some specific height limits that I believe more or less amounted to you go taller. And then, the big one was the increase in hotel density. Our general plan was last comprehensively updated in 2005. It was interesting to be looking at some of that LEDMA stuff. LEDMA was sort of infamously overhauled in 2005 and 2006. So John may remember that whole process. Our general plan was last fully updated and adopted right around that time. I don't imagine that means our general plan doesn't comply with LEDMA in any really problematic way. It's just kind of an interesting case point. The noticing requirements may have changed or something like that in the last 20 years. We talked about the most recent update. It's a pretty, it's mostly a policy document, which a lot of general plans are. Some cities will get much more granular in terms of planning out road networks and parks and water and sewer, and ours doesn't have to do that. Ours is relatively high level, I would say.
Yeah, population trend lines, that'd be kind of boring, but
In Alta, well, it'd be, So, as we discussed earlier, there's been a lot of change in the last 20 years. There's 25% more people, or 33% or so more people in Salt Lake. These are round numbers based on, decennial census counts. We've got the Icon Pass in Alta and ski industry consolidation. Great Recession, COVID-19 pandemic. Seems like there's a lot more people up here. There's some numerical evidence to support that, a whole lot of anecdotal evidence. I went looking in a pinch for evidence that, changing weather patterns up here. I'm sure we could find some if we looked for longer. It's pretty warm right now. But of course, it's not unprecedented for there not to be skiing a week before Thanksgiving here in Alta. I I think there's less summer business in Alta than there was 20 years ago. I sort of understand that the Great Recession really changed, if not permanently, then for a generation. The seasonality of the economy up here, and it may be more seasonal than it was before. There have been any number, what I don't know, like Baker's dozen major transportation studies in Little Cottonwood Canyon. But we do now have a decision by UDOT to pursue, first an enhanced bus and then future a gondola to get people up and down Little Cotton Canyon. The town of Alta itself is at the very top level, a very similar organization, but of course our budgets have grown substantially. Our staff has grown, our portfolio of services has grown a little bit. We bought a building a few months ago. And then we've talked about the general plan updates. Of course, Alta is also in many ways the same. Our population has been really stable. Our actual year-round population, I think that's mostly because we're pretty built out. Our census population in 2020 was 80, whereas typically 380. I think our real, if we were to do a decennial census today, it would probably be pretty close to 380, like it often is, because we just haven't added that many dwellings. Alta hasn't changed ownership ever, and that is more and more unique as the ski seasons pass. The rest of the business community really hasn't changed all that much either. I mean, I think, this gets into the question of what's going to happen on the Chef property. Business ownership is remarkably stable in Alta, and zoning is a question of how much it shaves off the peg to fit in a round hole, the square peg. But it's certainly a big part of the Alta business community that we have the same families owning property in Alta for generations.
What are the skier days like? Have they changed much?
I think they generally they've gone up since COVID. That much is clear.
What percentage of the business is the passes, not the season passes, but the icon pass?
I'm not qualified to say.
See, Mike Mon gave us those numbers recently. And I think it was on the order of 40%, but I'm not real sure about that. Sound right?
That sounds right. And then legend has it that our busiest days were in the 80s. So doesn't mean the busiest season necessarily.
Well, the lines were longer, but the lifts were slow.
Right, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, that's stated that with if we're successful with this grant, that would be gathered through a Forest Service special use permit reporting requirement.
Yeah.
Skier days.
And we often FOIA the skier days information and always get responses to those records requests. To be cautious on the record here, but anyway, so so that has changed, but obviously, what it's like hey, we still don't allow snowboards, that's one thing that hasn't changed.
Well, the snake's gotten bigger and happens more frequently, but that's more snowbird than anything else.
Yeah, and it's happening in the summer because of Oktoberfest.
I think it's relevant to point out that annual snowfall totals that the common study plot, the country's oldest active study plot, still show over 500 inches a year. So, that the Earth's getting warmer and it will affect the ski industry and the climate weather patterns in Alta, but it does still snow here quite a lot. And of course, we haven't seen a major transportation project. So, we need to update the general plan. We want to get a grant. Funding would be available as soon as July to hire consultants. We've got a couple of weeks to refine an application. Hopefully have some flexibility after submitting the application to refine the scope of work. And somewhere along the way, we have to prioritize things to focus on, because I think, we could spend the rest of our lives updating the town of Alta general plan. But we don't want to do that. We want to make sure we get we want to make sure we address key topics and attain some key outcomes. So,
Okay.
so anyway, my objective was to have you guys sort of tell me, to provide us some feedback.
Chris, two things real quick, that's great, in my opinion. One, do you need a resolution from us to submit
No.
as part of the grant application?
No, do we need a letter from the planning commission chair?
I don't know if it was like required, but.
I'm just thinking of supporting it, you know.
Yeah.
A little icing on the cake there.
Yeah, but I think any indication of support from the commission and the council as well as. Would
Yeah,
benefit
or,
Yeah,
the application.
yeah.
up to you, but, second thing is, what are you thinking about in terms of the ask?
Give me the dollar amount?
Yeah,
Jeez, well,
The dollars.
consultants are expensive. Consultants are really expensive, it
Yes,
takes
they
a
are.
long time to take consultants. You know, John, don't take this personally. You know, consultants. Often take a long time to get up to speed. It takes a baseline budget just to get consultants oriented to your environment, and health is such a unique environment. And it's such a tone that people bring with them to Alta and consulting projects. I don't know. Anyways, I think we'll want to ask for a substantial budget. We've been counseled to ask for a substantial budget, and by substantial, I mean over 6 figures, and maybe a good amount over 6 figures. The commercial core plan was $105,000 consulting projects, and most of the general plan updates that WFRC funds are 130 to 170. There's also the topic of that we can ask for support in amending town code, which if we come up with some good stuff in the general plan update, it would be most effective to codify some of those changes. And that could be, you know, changes to the zoning ordinance itself, or for instance, our vegetation management ordinance.
could that could also be another grant, subsequent grant.
It could, I mean, it could, so we could wait, but I will say, we've been talking, now I'm blue in the face from talking about. More low hanging fruit updates to our land use ordinance, things like. What is the zoning amendment application, is our conditional use process up to snuff? And potentially write a grant so that we get funding to support that kind of work alongside a general plan update, so it's really, it could be a big opportunity for us, but I know. You know, we wanna manage expectations, and the bigger consulting project we undertake, the more bandwidth for staff and commission and council. Will need to be devoted, of course, we've got all this other big and important stuff to do.
I guess what I'm suggesting, throwing out there is, this year, the general plan ask. Followed by the very next grant opening, assume you're gonna be needing additional money for the code.
Zoning
Yeah,
updates.
zoning updates.
Yeah.
That way. Cause it's not gonna be concurrent. Right?
It feels a little safer, like from a staff. Point of view, my sense is that the funders have moved more towards funding bigger projects because they have a higher rate of success. Or bigger.
Yeah, it's
budget.
your call, whatever advice you're getting from them, by all means, go with it,
Right, would we win another grant?
yes,
Potentially, there's a good chance, so.
if I right.
Yes.
All right, you do it, yeah, but if you. Well, if you want me to, if we want a resolution, or do you want me to write a letter between now and the 11th, whatever you guys want to do. I think that. Peppers at everybody's
Well,
mouth,
Chris,
but-
if you were asking a question, I think the vision statement applies, but we should.
Yeah.
Agree to that or kind of rehash that.
Yep.
And then the thing about transportation. It's kind of a big deal, some of it just sort of happens to us, so I don't know how much we can control it, but
No, I'm sorry about that.
I don't know what that means, but I think transportation is important, is what I'm trying to say, and the commercial core idea, we've been talking about maybe ground floor commercial uses and, you know, seemingly, I'm supportive of that in the sort of the town core, the base facility zone, so that might be an additional focus of what we do.
So you got a framework of a scope of work. Sort of,
Sure. Yeah,
a little bit.
yeah, I mean, I did look through the
Start.
chart and, you know, at a high level, based on the subject headings and subheadings, these are the things that stand out to me. I mean, you know. No hindsight here, but watershed protection, open space are predominant themes in the general plan and in town code. And I guess I would just. Well, we had a pretty big. We had a pretty big proposal on the table and recently on a big piece of vacant land that's zoned for, that's, you know, there's a development agreement for subdivision and you know, that was a very complicated proposal, but anyway, I think we need to refresh our commitment to watershed protection and, you know, open space. Remind ourselves of how important that is.
See Jeff has his hand.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff, please.
Yeah, I was just gonna, when you're writing your grant, I think if you could really highlight and make sure you budget in there public engagement in this process. My past experience with writing these grants is they really like to see that you're engaging the public in these processes. So just a thought. And on watershed protection, you need to go back and read your water contract because that's part of the deal.
Yeah. Right.
Well, yeah, I don't know if it would, I think it's
I
right.
mean, a resolution. What effect does a planning commission resolution have? It's not noticed, but I mean.
I think if you just have the chair write a letter and I'm getting general head nod, everyone supports this concept.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that'll do it.
Okay,
And John, I don't wanna go down a rabbit hole for years and years on this,
right,
but
okay,
I do think. Like, you know, it's a 20-year-old document and.
No, let's get after it.
We need to consider the whole thing and, you know, we might decide that half of it still applies, I mean, I think. That would be a very well the case.
yeah, just have them go through the baseline and the data and the trends and see where we are. Okay, I'm ready to sign whenever.
Okay,
Yeah, got to draft it too.
Yeah.
I will. All right. Good, thank you. Thank you. I hope you got what you needed from us on that.
yeah.
Any new business, agenda item 6, anything new? Okay. Date and potential agenda items for the next meeting, so. When is it, the 17th, 18th, something like that, 17th?
It's 17th.
17th.
Wednesday.
Yes.
It's a Wednesday. We've already told Shuttle Chef folks to come on back, and I'm sure they will. Ew.
There might be some updates on this, what Chris just alluded to.
Well, they won't have decisions on.
No, but you'll have submitted the application, correct?
Oh, general plan? Yeah.
But there will be word from WFRC by this.
No, but I mean. Yeah, look, I mean, this could be this could be a big deal for the planning, it will definitely be a big deal for the planning commission.
Yeah,
I think we'll
sure.
wanna do, if we're gonna do it, we win a grant, and if we're gonna do it, we're gonna wanna have commission and council joint meetings so that. We're all on the same page,
Okay.
so I, you know, we'll wanna be in touch about it.
Okay, so right now we're planning at 3 o'clock on the 17th,
You're still doing our skier.
and then the ski is out, the 1:30.
Well, let's talk about it, so. The general manager of Alta Ski Area has put it on his calendar to join us for a ski around, that would be at 1:30, planning commission meetings at 3. That's probably just enough time, but of course we'd have to. You know, we could enjoy the age-old tradition of sitting in a public body with your ski boots on, but it might take, you know, a few minutes to
Sure,
freshen up for the
sure.
meeting. So,
We will need to start at 3. just-
so it might not be look, it might not be possible to get from the top of Collins to the Wildcat base on the 17th of December.
Yeah.
So my recommendation is to assume that's tentative until we know it's worth it, but
And we also know the 2 commissioners. you know.
right, so 2 commissioners
Yeah.
can't join us, so I mean,
Yeah, my thought is, let's defer this till March. Let these 2 commissioners get well.
Are you gonna be, well,
Yeah, I'll be fine. I'll be fine for skiing at least,
Yeah.
mentally perhaps.
That's a different question.
yeah, I mean, we can defer, I think it, one of the reasons to have Mike talk with us is. It's not as crowded, we can actually learn, you know, our point is to learn about capital, thoughts about changes at the ski lifts on the mountain. Things like that, I suppose we could do that in March, hear from Mike about what he's thinking about for the summer capital projects
Mhm.
and beyond. Maybe it doesn't matter if it's December or March, I was always thinking early in the season, but we can wait. I don't know, yeah, anybody else have thoughts on that?
When do they submit their master plans?
well,
For the Forest Service,
I mean, sorry, I shouldn't say that.
February or so,
I don't know, I mean, the Forest Service reviews small NEPA applications. And the ski areas and the Salt Lake Ranger District do a lot of project work via those. How often they update their 10-year MDP, I don't know. Sounds like 10 years, but I honestly, I couldn't tell you where they are in the cycle and.
But I'm pretty sure by March they'll have their summer plan.
yeah, oh yeah,
like
they'll know what, they'll have to.
They're saying it's gonna be a lot. It's gonna be a lot lighter summer in terms of projects than.
Activity.
So.
Yeah, so right.
And that's, if that's the case, I'm fine with March then, if that means 2 of us can join. That's fair,
Okay,
alright, so we'll stick with our 3 o'clock on the 17th.
okay, I'll let Mike know and I'll just,
If anybody wants to come up early, that's.
Yeah.
So, I mean.
yeah, I'll keep the calendar invite, we, you know, can go skiing.
Speaking of that, we can email each other from social things, right? Sorry.
Yeah, as long as it's just,
Okay, I'm skiing an hour before the meeting, anybody wanna join? That's it.
yeah, that's fine, just please do not talk anything,
Oh, yeah, right.
talk about
Snow quality.
snow quality.
That's not realistic.
All
Be
right,
sure to invite me.
okay,
Right, just yeah.
I just wanted to hear that out because, you know, I like to try to do that a little bit, so.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, that sounds like we have a plan in for the 17th. I have to be smart 5 for a meeting about the other canyon, a formal EA. So I'll be heading down to Cottonwood Heights. We've got that, let's go, so agenda item 8, motion to adjourn, I think we're good. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, a motion to adjourn in a second. All those in favor, nod your head. Aye. Thank you, there's Jeff, oh, there's Jeff, very good, thank you for the thumbs up, thanks everybody.
Thanks, Jeff, thanks, John.
Yep. All right.